Alrighty, my sweet Yamcolites. If you clicked on today's video and you don't want to hear profusive Triumph simping, well, you can go ahead and click off right now. This is one of my very favorite motorcycles I've ever ridden. I've been wanting to check out this bike ever since it was released. This is my ride and review of the Triumph Scrambler 1200 XE, baby. Man, what a cool bike. As many of you know, Scramblers are near and dear to my heart. I am the proud owner of a Ducati Scrambler Desert Sled. That is my bop-around bike, my kind of daily bike, my do-everything bike. I've had it for over 4 years. I adore that machine. It ticks off all the right boxes for me. But I gotta be honest, when this Triumph came out, the Scrambler 1200 XE, a few years ago, I was very intrigued. This thing ticks off a bunch of boxes for me. I think it's one of the best executed street bikes you can buy on the market today, and I'm going to show you why. But a big shout out to Eurocycle Las Vegas for loaning me this motorcycle. They are our preferred dealer partner. They send us out bikes to test ride and review, all kinds of great stuff with them. If you hit that link below, you can get a motorcycle delivered straight to your door. Check out their website, browse their inventory. You can order a motorcycle from any one of their dealerships and get it straight to your door. That's how we've gotten dozens of our motorcycles, both loaners and bikes I've purchased with them as well. It shows up in a big truck. It is the easiest process ever. You do all the paperwork online. It's very, very simple. So big shout out to them. Couldn't do it without them. But let's get into this ride and review of the Triumph Scrambler 1200 XE, baby. So be sure to use the chapters features down below in the video because this one's going to be a long and in-depth one. I'm going to walk around this motorcycle and talk you through all the specifications and what makes this thing kind of different from the traditional 1200 Bonnevilles that Triumph sells. We're going to take it out for a ride and review. We're going to get it on-road and a little bit of off-road, even though I promised you guys I wouldn't ride off-road anymore. I got to check this thing off-road a little bit. Going to get it in the twisties, see how it wheelies, do some highway manners with it, just do a full in-depth review. And at the end of the video, I'm going to render a verdict on what I think of this machine. So let's start off with the specifications and what this bike is working with. So Triumph kind of views themselves as the progenitors, the stewards of the Scrambler category. Back in the 60s, guys like Steve McQueen rode the Bonnevilles. They modified them, did hill country races, all kinds of cool stuff. You already know the deal with that. But Triumph's kind of been waving the Scrambler flag for longer than anybody else, in my opinion. They've been putting out Triumph Bonneville Scrambler variants of their Bonneville platform for several years now. This one is a little bit different. So let's start off with the beating heart of this motorcycle, this 1200cc parallel twin 270-degree crank, liquid cooled, although they have the packaging done here in a really cool way. You see this radiator is kind of hidden away here, blacked out. You got the old school fins here, what looks to be a carburetor, but it's not. It's fuel injected, highly modern engine, making about 86 horsepower and 81 foot-pounds of torque. As you guys can tell, exhaust gases are being flowed out of a high pipe exhaust with a heat shield here. For 2022 plus, I believe, they updated this heat shield, and you got a little bit better heat protection right there, which is really great to see. You're working with the same platform of the Bonneville T120, so this steel tubular frame here is the same as the Bonnevilles, albeit with a skid plate and a couple of modifications. Where things start to get a little bit different for this motorcycle is this aluminum swing arm. Look at this thing. That does not look like it would belong on this frame, but Triumph's done a really cool thing. They've taken this modular Bonneville platform and done all kinds of stuff with it. You've got the Speed Twins, the Scramblers. It seems like they've built a platform and built one well they can do a lot of stuff with. Chain on the opposite side of this motorcycle, that's a classic Bonneville touch. 6-speed gearbox on this bad boy, not a 5-speed like the other Bonnevilles. So this aluminum swing arm is longer than the Triumph Scrambler XC, which is the road variant of the 1200 model. This is the XE, which is the off-road version. You can tell we've got these Metzler kind of chunky off-roady-esque tires. We have dual Olin shocks in the back, fully adjustable for preload, rebound, and compression. You have these foot pegs with removable rubber mounts in them, so you can pop these out, get a little more grip off-road, which this thing can definitely get it off-road. We're going to talk about that a little bit because it's really cool. Up at the front is really where the big difference is. You have this massive 47mm Showa fork here. This unit is adjustable for preload, rebound, and compression. 9.7 inches of travel, folks. That is proper adventure bike stuff. And the whole ethos of this motorcycle is kind of a naked adventure bike. I mean, if you look at it, the proportions, the 21-inch 17 setup, you can get tires for that thing that are going to be very, very grippy in off-road conditions. The stance of it, the height of it, very adventure bike. 34-inch seat height on this bad boy, so those who are a little vertically challenged may find a hard time swinging a leg over this machine. The tire and wheel combination here, I wanted to point out, this is side-laced right here. This means that this motorcycle is running a tubeless wheel and tire setup. That is actually a really great thing. My Desert Sled, for example, is a tubed wheel and tire, and if you get a flat, which I got the other day, it's just a giant pain in the butt to fix because you have to completely take the wheel and tire off, you have to get a new tube in. If you get a puncture in this, you can definitely fix it on the side of the road, which to me is a little bit more adventure bike in nature. Dual disc Brembos radially mounted. They didn't have to do it to them, but they did anyways, which is so sick. Radial pull master cylinder, proper Brembo unit up here. That's really cool, man. It's just really sweet. You got the big, long shelf seat right here, the banana seat, as I like to call it. Beautiful retro looks here. I just think this bike is great. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys. I think this bike is fantastic. So let's get it started up. It is a keyless motorcycle. So you always have the key in your pocket, which I have right here. You then select neutral to fire it up. You have the electronic display from the Rocket 3 and a couple other bikes. This display is shared with a couple models. It is not my favorite that Triumph makes, but I think this fits this bike more than their 5-inch or 7-inch TFT display. That would look pretty weird if it was on this motorcycle. Let's get her started up, shall we? We'll hear this parallel twin come to life. Ooh, chugging along here. Burbling away. I'll give it a couple revs. That's nice. Doesn't redline too high. It seems to end at about 6,500 or 7,000 RPM, but what that does is it gives you a broad spread of torque. You can really feel that broad spread of torque from this 1200. This is one of my favorite street biased engines on this thing. So let's swing a leg and let's get started riding it, shall we? I do not want to get off of this machine. First thing I'm going to do, just because I love you guys so much, I'm going to go ahead and chuck this thing into off-road pro mode just for right now. This thing has 5 different modes. It has a rider mode, which you can set things up, a rain mode, which dials the power down, road, which is middle of the road and power, sport mode gives you all the power, off-road mode gives you off-road TC and off-road mapping for the throttle, and off-road pro mode pretty much just turns everything off and lets you have fun. I will be testing out off-road pro and off-road mode off-road, obviously, and when I'm on the street here, I'll be using sport mode. But for now, I wanted to do off-road pro mode because I wanted to get you guys the slow speed manners on this thing. Taking off, the clutch is a cable-actuated clutch, not hydraulic, but you would be hard-pressed to think that this is actually a cable clutch because it feels really good, or a hydraulic clutch because it feels really good. So this motorcycle is tall, it's got these big wide bars, so you can very comfortably ride this thing in circles, in parking lots. I think it's a very easy motorcycle to get along with in the slow speed stuff. Really nice. Very compliant. The fueling Triumph always gets really right. And one of the best things about this bike is how it wheelies. It wheelies so easily, so playfully. Skid out the rear. Yeah, buddy. It's got that supermoto flavor to it. Although it does weigh 507 pounds. It's a big old heavy bike, but it's got the juice. And you can just goof around with this thing, man. I'll pop another little wheelie for you guys here. That is a ton of fun, man. And that's what I look for in a motorcycle. I want playful, I want maneuverability. That's what I like in a street bike, man. One thing I don't like is the settings and the menus here are a little bit tricky to navigate. I'm going to go ahead and chuck it into, where is sport mode here? I'm going to do sport mode. And I got to go in the menu here. Got to do riding modes. In sport mode, I want my TC off so I can, well, I guess I can't do the TC off in sport mode. How do I change the TC to off? Maybe it's in bike setup. Oh, I think it's in bike setup. Yeah, I don't love this this whole setup from Triumph. You also can't do this on the fly, which is a little annoying. So now we're in sport mode. We have TC off. Let's go have some fun with this motorcycle. Great spread of power, man. Really, really great spread of power on this thing. Really like it. Oh, that is so good. So you feel that it's a long bike whenever you get it up to do a wheelie. It feels really stable. It feels like a big, long, kind of just, you know, lever point, just pulling up really nice and slow. It's not choppy. Some bikes with short wheelbases, they'll happily wheelie, but they're a little choppy to do it. This bike is just really nice and really likes to do that. And I'm not a wheelie expert by any means, but I do love getting the front wheel up on my motorcycle. Charging through these twisties in 4th gear here because we have so much torque. We can just cruise along with this bike. It's a great dual nature of a motorcycle. You see here, decreasing radius will pump those brakes with that master cylinder. Feels great on this motorcycle. And you can hustle this bike and you can cruise with this bike, which I love, man. That's what I love to see in motorcycles. I want a bike that I can do it all with. And man, this is a bike you can do it all with. You would think a 21-inch wheel and 17 out back and this tall motorcycle will be a teensy bit unwieldy in the twistier bits, you know? But honestly, it feels great. Triumph always makes a well-handling motorcycle. I've never ridden a new Triumph that I thought was kind of weird or sprung a little bit strangely. They really just get it right, man. And I don't want to sound like too much of a simp, but they really do. For a street bike, look at this. It holds a line beautifully. Power out, stand this thing up out of corners, and it works really well. Again, that 1200cc motor is very flexible. It's not a screamer of an engine. You don't want to be revving this thing out, but you can tell immediately after taking off with this bike, that's not what you're going to be doing with it. You're not going to be, you know, ringing this thing off the red line. You're going to be just probably chugging along through corners and just charging them and just feeling that power come on in a beautiful way. These 1200 parallel twins, they have a nice bark. You can tell this had this low down grumble, and with an actual exhaust, even though the stock one sounds pretty good, man, this thing probably sounds incredible. Downshifts work beautifully. Triumph gearboxes are one of my favorites. Even in these Bonnevilles, they snick right into place, just like the Speed Triple and Street Triple models, even like my Daytona. It's just a nice feeling. Carving it through the tighter stuff here, such an enjoyable motorcycle to do this sort of thing with, man. Honestly, this seating position is just right for me. I am a little biased. This is the platform that I love the most. You know, these kind of do-it-all new age scramblers. Like my Desert Sled, I think, is one of the best street bikes I've ever owned. And this 1200 here, man, I gotta say, I gotta be careful. Otherwise, I'm gonna take this thing home with me and not give it back to Chris, because boy, oh boy, I just want to keep riding it. I have the biggest smile on my face when I'm on this thing, because it just feels that good. And I love that, you know, you can boogie with it, you can have fun with it. It feels playful, it feels lighter than its weight would suggest. You can grab a couple gears down. You could ride it like a huge supermoto if you really so choose. I wouldn't recommend it. It is 507 pounds, so if it goes sideways, you better know what you're doing. And it, I don't know, just invites you to flick the bars and get on the gas and get the machine pointed in the right direction. It is so good. It is so good, man. Love this thing. Now let's talk about some things I don't love on the motorcycle before you guys think that I am just abjectly simping for this thing. One of my kind of pet peeves on this is actually the gas cap. I'll actually show you guys here really quick. We'll pull over and I'll show you guys here. So it is keyless. However, the gas cap, get it in first gear. The gas cap is like this weird old school setup where the whole thing actually comes off. And it's a touch point that you're going to interact with week over week if this is your motorcycle. And first of all, you already have to, do this whole thing, and it comes out, and it's like you have nowhere to put it, and it's just awkward. I don't know why they didn't just put it on a hinge. I get it that it's like the old school style and all that, but I would have really preferred to see a traditional gas cap, because I think that would have just worked better. The little aluminum buckle here is cool, but they could have put a real gas cap on it. The other thing I already mentioned, but I want to talk about it some more, the electronics package, it works well. This bike has cornering ABS and TC and a lot of great stuff, a lot of good features on this bike that are missing on the Desert Sled, for example, which I feel is a direct competitor to this machine. Although it is down on displacement, the spirit of the bike is the same. But I just find getting to all that stuff is very cumbersome. I don't like the little joystick that Triumph uses. I never have. I remember I started noticing them on the 2020 Street Triple models. It's not my favorite system. I don't find it very intuitive. It's difficult to navigate with whenever you're riding, and the fact that you can't change certain parameters on the fly makes it a little, I just, why can't I chuck it into whatever mode I want or turn off TC while I'm riding? I think Ducati does a great job of that in their newer models, like the Street Fighters, the V4Ss and stuff, where you can very quickly access the modes and you just close the throttle and it selects the mode. This kind of does that. You can cycle through the different modes. But you guys will see here, as I'm moving, for some reason, I cannot change to off-road and off-road pro mode while I am moving. I have to stop and then select those modes. You see here, it cycles past the off-road mode, so it's kind of like, well, why'd they do that? That's a little silly. Oh, that parallel twin's so juicy. It's funny because this thing doesn't rev out that high, but you actually find yourself speeding a little bit with this thing. I find myself going a little too fast most of the time with it, because although it looks so gorgeous, it is a pretty speedy little bike. Whoa. It's not slow by any means. One thing this bike has as well that's super cool is cruise control and heated grips. And to be honest, that makes this machine, in my opinion, such a capable long distance bike. Now, hear me out, guys. You don't need a bunch of wind protection and an ugly fairing to go and enjoy your motorcycle on a long distance trip. This thing makes me want to just chuck a tank bag on it, put a backpack on, or maybe a saddlebag or whatever, and just hit the road, man. This thing really makes me just want to go and have no itinerary, just go as long as it takes me, find a motel, pull off, sleep, keep going in the morning, just have an adventure. I don't know, it makes me really want to have an adventure. And I think that's what the bike is designed for. It's cool that it elicits that out of you. Some motorcycles, you ride them and you're like, well, I don't know, I guess you could go and do that. But this thing, it just looks so cool. You just want to go and do that with it. And I really, really enjoy this bike. Let's get a quick little pull in, shall we? Let's see. First gear here. Yeah, it's no slouch, but it's not blisteringly fast. Let's be honest. 507 pounds, 80-something horsepower. It's good, but it's not going to set your world on fire. It's not an H2, folks. Let's be honest. But it doesn't need to be, because I can just cruise along. I can just enjoy this so beautifully. And one note I wanted to make is the suspension on the Scrambler 1200 XE is rather stiff from the factory. I think they spec'd in some pretty beefy springs on this, because I find the suspension to be quite stiff. You could dial that out a little bit with rebound and compression, but I find the stock package to be very stiff, and I think they did that because they want people to ride these off-road, and I'm interested to see how it's going to do off-road. I bet it's going to feel quite a bit like a new age adventure bike. I'm imagining that's what it's going to be like. So folks, let's get this thing out on the highway and then out on off-road conditions, maybe ride it a little bit more in the twisties. We'll form a final opinion. Let's keep it going. All right, trying the Triumph Scrambler 1200 XE in off-road conditions. You might say, Yam, you said you were never going to ride off-road again. Well, for all the gatekeepers out there, this isn't real off-road, right? In my country, this is just road. So, I guess we're not off-road, you know? But we're trying the XE in environments of low grip. We are currently in off-road mode. And what I look for in bikes like this, man, are how is it like to stand on this thing? You know, how are the ergonomics fitting me? Can I reach the bars easily? Can I grip the tanks with my knees? And one thing I'm already noticing with this bike is that you know, have a harder time gripping the tank because of the tank shape and also the exhaust right there. That high mounted exhaust is a little cumbersome. It's in a bit of a weird spot and it kind of heats up your leg a little bit. Not too bad, manageable, but it does heat up your leg a little bit. Now, rolling over these lumpy conditions here, a couple of shale rocks and loose rock gardens. The suspension is stiff but incredibly compliant. It actually rolls over this stuff really easily. That 21-inch front wheel does a great job. This is quite a bumpy section right here. A lot of loose little baby head rocks. Does pretty good. The power is manicured quite a bit in off-road mode, and that's good because you don't need 81 foot-pounds of torque off-road, but it'll still let you slide a little bit. You can enjoy the bike. Still lets you do things, which is cool. See how off-road ABS works. Lets you slide a teensy bit. This is a fast and flowy kind of bike. Terrain like this is definitely what it's suited for. I personally wouldn't take it on a tight single track, but if you were brave enough, I suppose you could. Why don't we check it into off-road pro mode and see how things change? I can almost bet you that we're going to get a whole lot more slip and slide. And yeah, ABS full disabled. And everything, do whatever you want. So let's see how that goes. Okay, coming in through here, squeeze throttle, get it to rotate. Yeah, it rotates pretty good. That's something I like to see on these bigger bikes is how do they rotate whenever you add a little bit of throttle off-road, because it's important. You know, these bikes are big. You don't want to always just rotate them with bar input. Sometimes it's helpful to just squeeze the throttle a little bit, get the thing pointed to where you want it to go, and just makes your life a little bit easier in these conditions. I will say it does feel heavy. It's a big bike. It feels like a big ADV because it basically is, man. This is a heavy motorcycle. 507 pounds off-road is something you're definitely going to want to bring a buddy to kind of pick the bike up for you or with you. Not for you, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Let's see a little bit of slip and slide action. Yeah, it'll do it. Duh. Duh, it'll do it. Let's see about getting the bike a little sideways here on brakes. Let's try to run a lap of this thing, shall we? Nothing too crazy. I'm still going to talk you guys through stuff. The fueling works really well for off-road. The on throttle isn't super snatchy. Actually really quite like that. But yeah, it's hard to grip this tank with your knees because it's just a big smooth teardrop shape. It's a little challenging. But man, you could get a lot of places with this thing, provided you bring the skills to pay the bills, and you don't mind riding a big lumpy bike. You can do a lot with this thing. I'd do it on a little fire road gravel adventure, sure, but I wouldn't take it on single track. That's just me personally. A little too big for that. not very confidence inspiring in the tight stuff, especially if you're managing 507 pounds of weight. That's a whole lot, folks. All right. Ooh, pivoting. A little bit of gas into pivots. Just like that. That's a lot of torque. Yeah. You really don't need 80-something foot-pounds of torque to have fun off-road, let me tell you. I think the saying goes, anything over 20 horsepower is just wheel spin off-road anyway, so kind of tend to agree with that. But yeah, I would say as an off-road machine, it's pretty good, you know? It's heavy, it's big, but if that's what you're looking for, if that's what you're into, and that's what you want, I mean, this thing fits the bill. It feels about as good as any ADV bike I've taken on that little loop. Some a little bit better than others, but, you know, overall, this thing works really well off-road. But I think the cool part about it is when you take those off-road chops and apply them on-road, that's when you get something a little special, you know? So what I want to do now is I want to float this thing through some twisties, get it on the highway, and then give you guys my final opinion on this bike. All right, folks, time to hustle the Triumph 1200 XE through some twistier bits. One of Austin's premier twisty roads, Lime Creek Road, running it, I guess this is the southeast direction. I don't know, going down. Usually go up, usually go down. You got, y'all, if you're local, you know what it is. I'm really impressed with this bike in these kind of conditions, to be honest. With a 21-inch front end, it actually dives in really, really well. The brakes feel really strong, really capable. See here, coming to this braking zone, I'm going to keep it in third gear because honestly, this bike has so much torque. It actually feels really good to kind of just lug it out of these corners a little bit. You don't really want to stress this motor. It's such a nice cruisery kind of engine, but it feels so snappy. It's nothing like a Harley 1200, if that's what you guys are thinking. It's snappy, it's refined, it's got power on tap. It feels way zestier than it has any right to feel. And it's genuinely one of my favorite engines in this category, this neo-retro category that people are doing. You know, other than stuff like Yamaha's triple cylinder engine that they put in the XSR 900, but that's not really what this bike competes against. You know, that's basically a sport bike that just kind of looks like a cafe racer. This thing is the real deal Scrambler thing. It's meant to go off-road, and as a kind of do everything dual purpose motorcycle, it works super well. It is road biased because it weighs 507 pounds and it has this big lopey engine, but I find it really, really good off-road as well, as you guys saw previously in the clip. But this is really what this bike loves doing. It loves carving through twisties at a calm pace. It really likes cruising. I'm going to show you guys on the highway the cruise control and some of the other features of this bike, but this is really where this bike shines. It loves just diving into corners like this, just cruising around. Look, this guy's all over the place. Florida drivers, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do with Florida drivers, man? What are you gonna do with them? But yeah, this bike really loves this kind of environment. Triumph's on-off throttle is just so good on these bikes too. Really composed, really refined. We'll hit this bump right here, no problem. That's one of my favorite things about these Scramblers is in urban conditions, in road conditions, having all this suspension travel is such overkill, but it just feels really good to tackle, you know, a pothole or a bump and just slam into it. This guy's just straight up not even in the same lane anymore, dude. That's a bummer. If anyone was coming the other way, they'd have a bad time. It'd be nice if people knew how to drive, huh? Overall, I think the Triumph works really, really nicely in these conditions. I think this motorcycle feels really, really great on the side of the tire, even with that big 21-inch 17 setup, the kind of 90-10 split tires here with the chunky blocks. I've got plenty of grip, feels really good. I like this bike, man. I like it a lot. So let's get this machine on the highway, talk through the cruise control and how it feels to just kind of cruise along if you're planning on doing a long distance with this thing. Heading out onto the open highway with the Triumph Scrambler 1200XE. You know, a lot of guys get it into their head that they need wind protection for a bike that's going to go long distance, and honestly, I've never felt that way. I actually really enjoy the feeling of the wind on my chest on my motorcycle because it makes me feel more connected to the experience. I recently rode a K1600 GTL, I've ridden a Goldwing, I've ridden some big touring bikes, and it takes away from the experience for me because it ultimately feels like I'm just in the car. So I actually like longer distances without a windshield. I actually did a really big trip a few years back on my desert sled. Did about 700 miles down to Mexico from Texas, and it was fine. It was a little cold. I didn't plan for that, but other than that, the overall experience of it was good. And this bike has some creature comforts that make it even better for long distance riding. Key among them is the cruise control. This motorcycle has some really phenomenal cruise control that just feels really, really good to use. So we'll click it up here into 5th gear, roll it on into 6th, activate it, tap it again, and you're set at 73. That's a really cool system. Most cruise control systems, they, you know, like the Aprilias, they're so fiddly and weird, and they don't let you use cruise control in certain situations. I am still really fond of the flick it and set it cruise control systems. That way they're similar to a car. This one is just the button is a little confusing because if you roll into it and accelerate, it just turns off, which is not normal. Normally in cruise control, you accelerate up to a speed and it sets it back at the speed you were at. So that's a little strange, but the system still works really well. You double tap and you are set to go and you're cruising on that motorcycle, which is pretty cool. On the highway, at highway speed, 70, 80 miles per hour, cruising along, chugging along. This motorcycle makes fantastic power, really low down power in the revs, and it just feels so good to use. It's so effortless the way it makes its power. You can be cruising 6th gear, roll on the power, and it's got this velvety spread of torque. So I'll show you guys here. I'll click it up. 2nd gear, 3rd gear, 4th gear, 5th gear, 6th gear, top gear on this bike. Cruising at 66. You just lay into it. Oh man, it just surges forward. It's really the ideal engine for this kind of riding. You know, long distance, you want a big torquey bike like this to just effortlessly get up to those speeds, sustain those speeds. It doesn't feel like the engine's working hard at all. I'm turning a little over 3,500 RPM, which is almost like a car engine, which is so cool. It makes the experience really, really nice. And it's cool is you could slot in from the Triumph factory a little fly screen to help with the wind buffeting if you really want, but I find it so neutral, the spread of wind on my chest, that I really wouldn't want to put a screen on it, you know? I like the seating position for long rides. It's extremely comfortable, very neutral position. I don't like, you know, the foot forward, hanging out vibe. Like, this is really not what I would want to be doing on a motorcycle long distance. This is the perfect stance for me, and so I rate this motorcycle pretty high on the highway long distance kind of thing. In fact, I would not mind doing a big tour on this thing. It, like I said in the first part of the video, it makes me want to just jump on and go have a big adventure and just go off to nowhere. That's exactly what I want to do with it. With all that being said, let's get it back to the shop and let's render a final verdict on the Triumph Scrambler 1200XE. But before we do, we're going to pop a little wheelie, just a little one. Click it up into 2nd, and we're just gonna... Okay, everybody, wrapping up my thoughts on the Scrambler 1200XE. What do I think? Man, I love this bike. I really do. I really do. I'm currently trying to convince myself that I don't need it, but I'm kind of like that SpongeBob meme where he's I think he's in Sandy's Dome, and he's talking about water, and he's like, I don't need it. I don't need it. And that's exactly how I feel right now, because this bike is fantastically fun, man. That's what I want out of a motorcycle. I want fun, and this thing delivers it in spades. It's pretty good off-road. You can chuck it anywhere. You can ride it all day long, ride it anywhere you want. Makes a great amount of power. Looks freaking cool. What is not to like about this Triumph Scrambler 1200 XC? I suppose the price tag, $15,400, is a little bit spicy, but I feel for the features you're getting, for the motor you're getting, the suspension, the overall fit and finish, it's definitely worth its price tag. So big shout out again to Eurocycle for loaning me this bike. I am now very much trying to maybe get one of these, because I think they are very, very sweet bikes. I knew I'd love this motorcycle because it takes off all the boxes that I'm looking for when it comes to a fantastic street bike. We'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later. Brother, only one thing to say to you today. While we sit here, taking a knee, it's a special moment, me and you hanging out here, do it. I don't even got to tell you what to do. You already know what to do. You've made it to the end of the video. You got the time. I know you're sitting there. You want to make sure that you can keep watching yourself some Yammy Noob. So what you want to do, just click that video right over here. Do it.